So I claim that, by within 20 years, the average lifespan is going to be at least 95, probably more. And then we would have reached the longevity escape velocity by then. And then, we would solve aging within maximum 20 years, but probably within 10 to 15 years. And definitely we'll be able to cure every disease. So I get these questions a lot. Incidentally, this is not a new prediction I made. I had a website called Biosingularity. I think I might have coined that word. I don't know if anybody used it before. This was 20 years ago. And I still have the website. It was a blog that I was writing, and so there I predicted in 20 years ago, in 2005, that by year 2045 or so, we're going to cure aging, and in not only aging, but we'll get to human 2.0, human enhancement, and so on, with the help of AI. 20 years ago, this was a pure science fiction. People like, oh, that's impossible. And my timeline didn't change very much. If anything, it actually is more forward now.
Derya Unutmaz, welcome to Levity.
Hello, very pleased to be here.
How do you pronounce your name in Turkish?
Derya Unutmaz.
Derya Unutmaz. Yeah.
It literally means big sea or ocean.
I mean, you are certainly swimming in a big ocean right now on X. You've just reached over 300,000 followers. What's your secret?
I don't really have a secret. I pretty much say what I think. I guess people like that I'm sincere in my thoughts. I don't have a particular agenda. I really want to sort of educate public, and maybe the nature of the work that I'm doing, trying to cure diseases and hopefully aging. And just very fortuitous time, because I've been interested in AI for past 30 plus years. And this turned out to be the moment that I needed to really reflect on my thinking and, try to educate people what's coming, which is really, really big.
So my introduction to you is that you are a world-renowned immunologist, pushing the boundaries of AI-driven longevity research. You're a professor at the Jackson Laboratory, and you explore how the immune system shapes aging and disease. And as we've said, you have over 300,000 followers on X right now. You've become a leading voice in the future of AI in medicine. And you also are just one of 10 scientists globally that were awarded an open AI research grant to explore how artificial intelligence can revolutionize healthcare. Why are you so optimistic about the future?
Well, I'm optimistic by nature, because I truly believe in human creativity, innovation, ingenuity. And, if you look throughout the history, we had some terrible, terrible times. But overall, we constantly progressed, especially in the past 100 years. The advances have been just amazing. But I should also say that I've been very influenced by some of the books that I read many years ago. Maybe I'll recommend some of those at the end. In particular, those who are trying to predict the future. I'm a big science fiction fan. I think science fiction really predicts the future. I've read a lot of books from Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke and others. And even in some of those, the future might look dystopian or bleak. You could see that it's also the path to a golden age, where we would have abundant resources and the life would be just amazingly better. So I've been focusing on that glass half full part, that we will reach that golden age, including curing aging, which I think is probably the most important problem of humanity. So yeah, it's just it's maybe a choice, but so far it's been going well.
Before we go on, can you tell me a little bit about the work you've been doing at Jackson?
Sure. I've been at Jackson Lab for the past decade, for about 10 years. Before that, I was full professor at New York University School of Medicine. And before that, I started my scientific career, independent career at Vanderbilt University, Nashville, Tennessee. And I did some trainings at NYU and other places. So throughout this period, which is more than 30 years of both training and research, I've focused exclusively on the immune system. And I've been trying to understand both the basic mechanisms of the immune system and how it affects diseases. I've studied HIV for many years because, at the end of the day, HIV is an immune disease. Chronic diseases such as chronic fatigue syndrome, cancer, which we've been developing therapeutics against cancer. The reason why immune system is so important is because you can imagine it as sort of your army, your police force, your firefighters, garbage collectors. It does a lot of things besides defending you, of course, against viruses and bacteria and so on. But it's also a sort of a double-edged sword. In fact, maybe a majority of diseases, chronic disease, are because of the immune system or uncontrolled immune system, just like an army. So I figured that it was a very important system to study and figure out. And it also has a tremendous effect on the aging process itself. So yeah, my focus has been, sort of both from the basic science perspective and how we could translate that knowledge to the clinic.
There are some who think that inflammaging is one of the most important hallmarks. Are you one of those people?
Definitely, inflammaging is actually. I'm just writing a big project on that topic. Is a very important. It's I don't want to say whether it's just a driver or also a consequence. Obviously, in biological systems, there's a lot of feedback loops that are negative or positive. So it's conceivable that inflammaging is a result of the aging process itself, which just makes things even worse because the immune system is also aging. So what we are trying to do is if we can reverse that process. But there's no question that inflammation, chronic inflammation, is one of the worst problems of health. Most of the chronic diseases, including accelerated aging, is because of the inflammation, chronic inflammation, and there are different degrees. In fact, the first time I got very interested in that was probably 25 years ago, studying HIV. Turns out that HIV infected people had a sort of an accelerated aging of their immune system. We were seeing exactly this inflammaging story there, and they were more susceptible to heart disease or cancers about 10, 15 years earlier than what you would expect. And we do see that in other diseases as well. So there's no question that inflammaging or immune system in general contributes to the aging process.
Yeah. And as you've been at the Jackson Laboratory for 10 years, during that period, we've had the Transformers paper coming out, which most of the modern large language models and multimodal models are based on. And then we had GPT coming out. Of course, everyone knows about ChatGPT that came out. It's crazy. It's just over 2 years ago now. It feels like a lifetime ago. So how have you followed this process, and how have you increasingly incorporated these new methods in your work?
So maybe I'm a little bit unique among my other colleagues because we're obviously medicine and biology focused, but I've been interested in computers and AI since I was a teenager. Literally, I've started my first coding on a computer called Spectrum 48K. Maybe you know this. Then Commodore 64 and Amiga, and I was a founder.
I had the Amiga 500.
Yeah, Amiga 500 was my favorite
Yeah,
computer.
wonderful gaming computer.
Exactly. In fact, I was in Turkey. I was one of the co-founders of the first hacker club of the
Ah,
Amiga. We were hacking and cracking, let's say, some games and so on. So anyway, I've had this interest since I was very young, and I got very interested in AI after reading a book from Ray Kurzweil called The Intelligent Machines. It's one of the books that I would highly recommend. It really influenced my thinking. And then I got into Marvin Minsky, who was one of the fathers of AI. So I've been following AI field for 30 plus years. I started one of the first when deep learning became really a thing about a decade ago. I started the first AI club at Jackson Labs, trying to integrate the AI into the biology. But of course, fast forward, especially things like AlphaFold, which was I think one maybe the first time we could see the tremendous impact of AI in biology and medicine. For those who don't know, AlphaFold pretty much figures the 3D structure of proteins. And this is sort of like the one of the holy grails of biology because to predict this 3D structure of protein requires years of work. Some PhD students just worked on one protein for 3-4 years, and AlphaFold in one day figured out the 3D structure of every single human protein. I don't want to place myself in place of those PhD students. So 3 or 4 years of work was just done in matter of minutes, and so you could now see the tremendous impact of AI. And then we had really critical moments. Of course, chess was much earlier, but the Go game was beaten by AlphaGo. Which I think was a really critical moment in AI history because there's the famous move 37, I think, where nobody predicted that, and the world champion of Go was in shock when that move was made, and so we could see that the AI was coming out. And of course, I started using GPT when it first came out, more than 2 years ago. And I was just blown away because I was thinking about these things all the time. Like, how can we use AI to, for example, to understand the incredible complexity of biology? There are thousands of papers being published every day, and there's no way that you can make those connections. Even in my very, very, very narrow field, I can't keep up with it. So I was just imagine there's an AI where I can go and ask, make a connection between cancer immunotherapy of this and a breast cancer, and it will just search everything in a matter of seconds, will come out with new ideas. So that was a dream, but with GPT, especially GPT 3.5, you could see that was the path that just opened. And I was so excited. I was telling all my friends and everybody, and people like, oh, it just predicts the next word. That's nothing special. There are even still some people who claim that. But yeah, I mean, it's been unbelievable, or really amazing to see the progress, especially after large language models and the transformer paper. I remember reading that many years ago. Was remarkable. I have to just the last word. I have to always uh, because I'm a biologist and focused on medicine, I always bring that back to the biological perspective. And because I think the intelligence is a biological emergent property, and we're trying to simulate that in the machine. And so that the transformer paper was very exciting for me because it was really it was saying attention is all you need. And in fact, that's how the brain works. The neural networks, as the name implies, that's the way our brains process information. So a lot of analogies from biology being now applied to AI was also very exciting.
And how do you use AI today more concretely in your work?
You should ask how you don't use it. The answer would be zero. So yeah, I mean, my use, exponentially increased since the original GPT came out. Initially I was using it to sort of help me write, letters or emails and things like that, correct my grammar, which was great. But in the past 6 months or so, the problem was, GPT 3.5, even the early versions of GPT 4 were kind of less reliable. There was more hallucinations. So you had to, and in science you have to be very precise, right? So you can't just, it's okay to imagine, but you got to be based on facts. And I always felt compelled to check the information, and that kind of beat the purpose. But since last 6 months, especially since O1 preview came out, things really changed because what I realized is that the reasoning level was so high that it's able to, I could trust its ideas. Of course, I was trying to verify or whatever, and so now. If you fast forward to today, the way I'm using it is like my 24/7 collaborator. It's not just doing the mundane work, which I still use it for. But basically, if I'm working on a project or if I'm analyzing data, if I'm planning an experiment, I have the Chat GPT open next to my window, which I think is like always open. And I have an idea. I'm trying to write something. I just immediately go to O1 Pro. I say, okay, so what do you think about that? And then we have a discussion. It just starts a brainstorming. Then I go back to the project, and then I say, okay, what do you think of this? And so it's really an incredible one-to-one collaborator nonstop. And so I'm at a point where there was like a day or two where I couldn't access O1 Pro a couple of weeks ago, and I felt like, okay, I lost half of my brain. I can't function. It was almost a panic moment, and it's gonna get better. O3 is coming, so.
Should we maybe mention what separates O1 and O3 from the older models?
So I haven't yet tested O3. I'm hoping that I think they'll release O3.
Yeah, but I'm thinking more like the method that's being used, the paradigm shift, because these are called reasoning models.
Oh, you mean just in general?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would make the analogy to Daniel Kahneman's famous book. Thinking slow and fast. So basically he got the Nobel Prize for this. His idea is that there's thinking one and thinking two, where most of our human thinking is very spontaneous, right? So it's built on things that we already know, and we can immediately process that information. And GPT-4o is more like that. And then there's the thinking two part where you have to really think, right? So you have a new thought coming to your brain, and then you just have to say, okay, so is this really right, or is this logical? Is this reasonable? And you go through an internal monologue. So I think that that might be one of the main differences, that all models really think. I mean, they are thinking. You can see that they're thinking, and in fact, DeepSeek is great because you can see the whole thinking process, which is really remarkable. And it's debating with itself, right? So, okay, I thought about that, but am I hallucinating? Am I thinking the right thing? Is that what the prompt was about? Okay, maybe I should go back and iterate on it and so on. So, and that reasoning turns out to be really, really unbelievably important, because then you can start to extract novel ideas and insights that GPT-4 or other models couldn't really provide. I mean, they brought you something new, but it was already there. It was processed. Where the old models, and maybe partly DeepSeek, is actually bringing its own flavor, or I mean, in quotation, intuition almost, right? I remember when I first tried O1 Preview, I got pretty emotional. I was like, I just stared at the screen, and that happened with O1 Pro afterwards as well, because you're saying, how could this be? Even for me, I've been in this field for 30 plus years. It's just difficult to grasp the the enormity of the situation.
Would you say that we are at the point now where we can say that the machines are creative?
Um, I think I think they are at the very start, at the very beginning. I don't want to call them like super creative as we are, but they're definitely better than an average person. I would say maybe better than 80% of the people. I think most people have some creativity, but creativity is unique because it is unique, right? So not everyone comes up with the greatest idea, or but they're not at the level of creativity of, let's say, Einstein, or where you have these enormous paradigm shifts, kind of a creativity. But definitely for me, it's like another colleague who's equally creative. So,
But you don't think that creativity is something that has to be biologically anchored?
um, you know, um, if you asked me this question maybe 2, 3 years ago, I would have said probably it's going to be extraordinarily difficult to replicate that in the machine. Even though I knew that we would get to a very intelligent point, because I guess intuitively for us it's very difficult to accept this reality, that it's only we are the special ones, right? So we can only create creatively. But if you think about it, I mean, what is special about us? We just have more neural connections. Like, why is a monkey not creative, right? They have the same brain structure. We just have more of it. We just have a little bit more complexity. So if you extrapolate that, and I think that was Ilya Sutskever's point as well, if you scale things up, then at some point you're going to get that emergent behavior that will become creative, definitely creative. So as a human, it's very difficult to accept this. I can understand that. I had to like tell myself, okay, maybe maybe it's not really creativity. Maybe it's that. But after a while, you have to give up, because you see the output.
So Ilya Sutskever is, of course, the by now famous scientist that was behind the AlexNet model that kickstarted the whole deep learning revolution in 2012. And then he was the chief scientist at OpenAI, and now he has started his own company called Safe Superintelligence. And I think it's also worth mentioning that we're recording this on January 30th, and we're not going to actually air this episode before March, I think. And that's pretty late when you think about what the AI world could look like then. This is not something that happens on a year-by-year basis anymore. It's happening almost day by day now, right?
Yeah, I think by March, everything I say here probably will be obsolete. So it will be like a historical,
Yeah, it's an artifact.
artifact to look back. Oh yeah, I predicted that, but that was like I was so not correct. Yeah. So, but again, I think this is. I'm going to predict another book from Ray Kurzweil for that. Singularity is near, which was sort of. Based on the ideas of Werner Winch. He was a scientist, but also a science fiction writer, where he proposed this idea of singularity, where that the technology advances so accelerates and exponentially advances so much that there's going to be a point where you cannot any longer predict even what's going to happen next day. And I read that book. Actually, I have a copy here. The reason why this copy is special for me is because Ray actually signed and sent it to me by himself about 2 decades ago. And I keep it like almost like a Bible here because you see that all of that is coming true. It's really things are really accelerating to a point that we can no longer start to predict even what will happen in a few months. Before it was years. Maybe you can say, oh, this is going to happen in 5 years or 10 years. Now maybe it's like 6 months. It's becoming that difficult. Even I think that people who are working in the field, in the AI field, are having that trouble. And you can see that some of the leaders in the AI, we're predicting. I won't give a name, but like we'll have AGI in maybe in 10, 20 years. And then they modified it. Oh, maybe in 5, 10 years. Or maybe in like 3 to 5 years. I had to do the same too. I mean, I'm not trying to be critical of that, because 6 months ago I was saying we'll have AGI in 2030, not before that, and now I'm saying we'll have AGI probably this year. So I like to see what happens in March when when this airs, but.
This episode of Levity is brought to you by Vitalism Foundation. It's a community of action driven by vitalism, a new moral philosophy whose first tenet is that life and health are good, death is humanity's core problem, and aging its primary agent. They're one of the few groups that truly understand aging as the emergency that it is.
Vitalism's goal is nothing short of monumental: to allocate 1% of global GDP to this project. It's ambitious, but it's exactly what's needed to tackle aging head-on.
As a member of Vitalism, you'll get access to a private community, exclusive content, and invites to special conferences. Plus, you'll receive insider prices on longevity wellness services from Vitalism's mission-aligned partners.
But more than that, you will be supporting a mission that's too important to leave to others to tackle.
You should really join us. Follow the link in the description below. For a limited time, you get 30% off forever. Just use the promo code LEVITY at checkout.
Again, that's 30% off forever with the promo code LEVITY. Let's make a difference together.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I immediately think of Jan LeCun, of course. You don't mention names, but I can mention some names. And it's really interesting because yes, he has changed his tone, quite subtle. He's trying to kind of change it
not
without
admitting that he was
exactly. And then, of course, if you look at those who have been bold in the past, they are even bolder now. So, for example, of course, you could argue that a guy like Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, of course, you could say that he's hyping his company and he wants investments and so on. He's now talking about the path to AGI is cleared, and they're already looking at super intelligence, which by definition means that you have an entity that is smarter than all humans combined, right?
Yeah.
And a guy like Dario Amodei, who is the CEO of Anthropic, who is more measured, I believe, than Sam Altman.
Yeah.
He's talking about 2027 or not long thereafter. We have, because he's not too fond of these concepts, AGI and superintelligence and so on, but he says something even more profound, I think. He says that AI will be better than all humans at all jobs. So,
well, what is that? I mean, if that's not AGI or even ASI,
yeah. So, how do you? I mean, I'm thinking about this quite a lot these days, and I have a hard time imagining this world. How do you think about this world?
I mean, that's a huge question. Again, I will also refer to another book by Nick Bostrom. He wrote this book, Superintelligence, which was, I think, it was a very good sort of a prediction of the future. Although he did sort of flip-flop between being an AI doomer and very positive, I think he's always somewhere in between. But the reason is that it's not so easy to predict the future. And I think there's another reason. Psychologically, maybe also for other reasons, people who are actually in the field are not really hyping. It sounds like they're hyping. I am just saying they are probably under-hyping it. People have this notion that, Sam Altman just said we're gonna have this model, that model. Just a few days ago, he came to Twitter and said, there's too much Twitter hype and this is not really
Right.
what's gonna happen. He just wanted to sort of suppress because this is such a disruptive transformation. I'm going to say creative disruption. And people, the humanity is not ready for it at all. If you just say that, next year, all of you are going to lose your jobs and AI is going to take over, that's not going to go very well, right? So you have to sort of tone down. If you look at Dario's talk and Sam Altman and other people, maybe partly psychologically, but maybe partly because they are afraid that if they actually tell the truth, the reality, what they think it is, there's going to be huge backlash to that. This is my interpretation. Of course, I might be totally wrong. I'm trying to be very intellectually honest here. Say whatever I'm trying to think about that, and that's the truth, because it's becoming so difficult to predict the future that uncertainty is actually very stressful for human brain. If you remember the pandemic, it was one of the most stressful times in most people's lives. It wasn't as much that the threat was so unbelievably bad. Of course, it was bad, but if you were a young person, your chance of dying from COVID was maybe 1 in 10,000. So it wasn't that bad, but there was an uncertainty. Like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to my job? What's going to happen to this? What's going to happen to my mom? So that uncertainty created a lot of stress. And I think, we had a spike in chronic diseases after pandemic because of the cost of the stress. And think of COVID pandemic and then multiply that by 100. That's the sort of uncertainty we have in future. But I can at least make prediction in long term, let's say a decade or 2 decades from now, because I don't know what's going to happen in that transition period. It could be pretty bad. But on the
I
long
just,
term,
Daria, I just have to say this is so funny because long term, just I mean, 5 years ago that was 2060. That was long
yeah,
term, right? Now it's
yeah,
10 or
exactly.
20 years.
Yeah, 10,
Extremely long horizon here
10,
we're talking
10,
about.
20 years is extremely long. And again, because the next 10 years will probably have more advanced than the past century or maybe 2 centuries, because of the acceleration. But I think that very long term, in a decade or maybe 15 years, we will really have a golden age. I mean, there's if we could pass through this transition period, there's no question about that. Why am I saying this? Because imagining a world where you have cured every disease, which will happen, no question, where we reverse the aging process. People don't have to worry about getting sick or dying because of aging, that they can have a completely new life, another 50, 100 years to live, perfectly healthy, perfectly young. They have access to resources that are not even imaginable to us right now, let alone, decades ago. Robots are doing most of the jobs. Everything is so cheap and so accessible. So everything is very democratized. Already you can see that AI is democratizing the whole world because you have access to unlimited knowledge on your phone. You won't need to go to a doctor or a lawyer. You don't need their services. AI is going to do everything for you. So your cost of living will be almost nothing. So imagine a world like that. That sounds like a really an amazing world. And you can see that path there. But how do we get there is the big question. And I don't know the answer to that. But on the long term, decade from now, I'm very, very optimistic.
Yeah, it seems like this decision makers and policy makers and people in those positions are going to have to start to have that conversation soon, the transitioning. But I wanted to ask you, Derya, about because something you have been vocal about and what you said now reminded me of that. Already now, we're talking about the democratization of AI. Already now, people can actually get quite good advice from AI when it comes to questions about disease, right? But of course, this is a little bit sensitive still because they can hallucinate and so on. But I think there have been papers showing that the foundation models are actually performing better, even if a doctor has a foundation model to consult. The foundation model by itself gives better diagnostic advice than anything else.
Yeah, and that was 6 months ago, by the way,
Yeah.
or 5 months ago. So.
So, what's your view on that paradigm shift? Talking about having your own AI doctor.
I mean, I was very blunt about this, and I was trained as a medical doctor myself, so I kind of know what it takes to be a doctor. And I'm trying to be sensitive to my colleagues, obviously. But at the same time, I felt that I did need to be intellectually honest. In fact, I think it was September or something. I issued a warning to those considering going into medical career, which got a lot of pushback, and some people said, "Oh, how could that be? We're going to need more doctors, not less." So I was thinking 10 years from now on, which is like almost a forever. So if you're going to a medical school now, by the time you train, you graduate, you become a specialist, it's going to be almost 10 years, right? You're going to invest a lot of effort. And most of those doctors are going to have a hard time finding a good job or, a good paying medical doctor job. The reason is that you can see this exponential increase. So the way medicine works is that it's very knowledge based. You look for patterns. You process the information you get from the patient. Yeah, your experience, the doctor's experience make a difference. What we call intuition. In fact, my dad was a doctor too, and I know that most of his diagnosis was based on how he felt about the patient. The reason for that is that our knowledge was very little, and even now it's not perfect. So the doctors have to fill in that gap of lacking knowledge, the medical knowledge, with their experience and the intuition and what they think could be going wrong. So that becomes sort of an art, and so on. But that gap is starting to get narrower and narrower as we understand the biology and medicine. And so put that together with the incredible power of AI to process almost unlimited medical knowledge. There's no way you can compete with that. And even now, as you are pointing out, I trust as a medical doctor to what an O1 model, or even GPT-4o tells me for a given disease or diagnosis or treatment than some of my colleagues. I told my mom, I said, if you have a medical problem, please use ChatGPT first. I taught her how to use it last summer. And now she's telling me I don't need you anymore because ChatGPT gives me better ideas, and so I can trust it as much. Yes, it's not perfect, but let me tell you this: there were 12 million misdiagnoses in the U.S. alone last year.
Right.
250,000 people died because of misdiagnosis or mistreatment or errors or whatever. 250,000 people died because of that. So AI could have saved probably 100,000 of those right now.
Yeah.
And it will save 249,000 of those next year, right? So it's the same story with the self-driving cars, right? People publicize if a like at a Tesla FSD makes an accident, 45,000 people die from accidents every year. How many of those make news, right? So if you can bring that down tenfold, if I can use AI to bring the misdiagnosis and death and suffering by tenfold, it will still probably make mistakes. That will save hundreds of thousands of people. Millions of people will be affected by that. So I made the point again in Twitter, or X, I should say, because if Elon Musk listens to it, he will be upset.
It would be great if you listen to this. It means that we're breaking through.
Yeah, I hope so. So, I said it's now becoming unethical for physicians not to use AI in their practice. And I got pushed back by several MDs, some pretty nasty, said, well, AI is still not there. It's not part of the standard care and this and that. So we have to break that. We got to break that because this is human life. This is not a joke. But that's medicine, and you're seeing that in every field. Like I actually wrote a patent application using O1 Pro on a biological system. Took me about an hour or two. I showed a friend who was a patent lawyer, and he said, "This is perfect. I don't have anything to add to it." It would have cost me like $5,000-$10,000 to have a lawyer write that. Didn't cost me anything. So the impact of this is just unbelievable. But on the other side, people who depend, and I feel bad for them too. My colleagues and doctors or lawyers who trained for years and years and years, and now they're sort of seeing the value of their knowledge set and expertise diminishing, logarithmically by value. That's not a good thing, of course. But what I'm suggesting is that they should immediately adapt AI in their practice so they can compensate for that. At least for the next decade, that will be fine. But after that, I don't think even that's going to work because AI is going to be so good. Robotic surgeons will be so good, so precise that no human will want to be operated by a human.
Yeah,
So
and
that's coming.
yeah, and of course, what I'm seeing 10 years from now, or maybe 15 years from now, if I'm being conservative, is my humanoid robot acting as my physician and my cook and everything else almost. Maybe I have several. Have to get a bigger house.
Exactly.
I think what you said about the doctors and the lawyers is just a great illustration of this incredibly confusing time we have ahead of us, that is going to make people even more stressed than the COVID years, for sure. I mean, people are basing their identities and their self-worth and their status in society on having these particular skills that they've owned over many years and so on. And now the computer does it better and everyone has it. And so it's like a huge existential crisis for many people that's coming, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the word existential crisis is the right word. That's why it's so difficult. I mean, I can tell you personally, I wake up with this, I sleep with this, but then I'm just realizing, you know, my title of professor doesn't really mean anything anymore, because fortunately I'm not doing a lot of teaching or any teaching right now. But if I were to be doing teaching as a professor, medical students or whatever, I would resign immediately, because there's something that's magnitudes better than me, doesn't cost anything. And it would be unethical for me to continue that teaching process if AI is O1 Pro can do it better than me. And that does affect you, that does stress you. And then imagine, okay, I can say, well, I'm I've done whatever I needed to do for the past 30 years. I'm good. I can retire. I never plan to retire, but let's just say, but imagine you're a young person. You just going to a university. I get messages from like second year medical students or fourth year students, or those who are going into PhD programs. What should I do? Should I continue? Should I drop out? I mean, it's really, really hard question. I would not recommend anybody doing that unless you're like really passionate about it. Like you feel that you're going to be in the top 10% or whatever you do. Yeah, go into it. You'll still be okay for the next decade or so or whatever, and then we don't have to worry about it afterwards. But other than that, what kind of advice can you give to these people? Teachers, educators, I don't know, anyone who's working in front of their computer engineers, software engineers. I can go into Replit or Cursor or one of these programs. I used to do some programming. I know a little bit of Python and this and that. And I'm like, I don't need that anymore. With just few prompts, I can just write code. I can make games. I can make web pages, things that would have taken months and months for a computer scientist now takes a few minutes. So yeah, it is an existential crisis.
But wouldn't you say, though, that still, let's say up to high school or something like that, it's not just knowledge we are passing on. We also want to shape and socialize the students and preferably also shape them into a certain kind of citizen or have a certain virtue and so on. That it perhaps not enough, like even if AI has all the knowledge and so on, it's not enough to just put a young person in front of the machine and say, you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I think I might have shared that as well. It's a very paradoxical situation. On the one hand, AI democratizing education, knowledge, expertise. So for a lot of things, you don't need to know anything. But on the other hand, having a very deep expertise on a given topic makes you a super individual. Again, I'll give an example from my field. Like, okay, anyone can go and ask O1 Pro about the immune system, the cancer, or whatever, but they're not going to be able to continue that question, like, because they don't know what's really the important next question to ask. The same with a computer software engineer who are very good, who are very deep into their work. They know what to ask next, and then you could just keep going with AI. I think this is true for anyone, and I completely agree with you that the golden age that I'm imagining is not an age where we just revert back to idiocracy or become all stupid and let the robots do. It's the opposite. I think now we will have more time to enrich ourselves, our minds. We I've learned more stuff in the last year or two than I've ever did in the last decade because now I can. It just makes it so enjoyable. Even topics that I didn't know about, I can just go and ask. All I have to be is curious. So my knowledge is increasing. The same with education, and I do agree that at least the first, maybe up to, until high school, the children has to be in the school. Teachers should be supplemented with AI. They should have all AI personal teachers, but it's important that they come together because the social interaction is extremely important. But my argument is that I just don't know about the higher education. Is there a point of doing that? Because once you reach to maturity and you pass through high school, you can literally train yourself on anything you can imagine without going to school, except for vocational things like if you have to do hands-on stuff, or you can have sort of like I imagine universities as sort of a gathering places, right? So let's say you're studying computer science, but you're not going to MIT. You just hang out there like once a week, and then you talk to other people who are also training with their own AI. You exchange ideas, or you do like hackathons, or socialize and things like that. That's something that I can imagine. But I again, I totally agree with you. This is the AI is not to replace the education, but what it's replacing is that forced education, right? I don't need to learn what I don't want to learn. I can now just focus on my interests, things that I want to learn. I want to enlighten myself, and so that's the opportunity. That's democratization, in my opinion.
I think Nick Bostrom, in his book Deep Utopia, a newer book but lesser known book than Superintelligence, he talks about the solved world, where we've solved all our issues that we're facing now, and in this world. We realize that artificial intelligence can do everything better than humans. And so he's talking about fostering a culture of leisure. We actually have to learn how to have fun, how to be playful, how to enrich that side of ourselves, because we're so tied up to this paradigm of working and identifying with our intelligence and so on. We call ourselves sapiens. So I think that's a good way to think about it. But still, of course, it's daunting at the same time. And my daughter, she's 11 now, and of course, I think about what the hell is she going to do? Is she going to ever go to the university? I don't know. That's like 10 years from now. Seems unlikely on the path we're heading.
But just to follow up on what you said, let's do a short thought experiment. Let's just imagine we go back, I don't know, 500 years, 1,000 years in the past, where there was no such thing as, like a regular work that you have to go 9 to 5 or universities or this and that. And then you suddenly brought AI to those people at that point. I mean, for them, it would be like something incredible. right? So because they don't have to worry about, I need to go to school, I need to educate, I need to become a medical doctor. They're just trying to survive day to day, and then just trying to have fun, socialize and tell stories to each other. And suddenly you say, okay, you don't even have to do that anymore. Okay, so that would be a really an enlightening moment. I think the problem is that it's especially after Industrial Revolution, our societies reconstructed such that we were forced to these, artificial duties or tasks. You have to wake up at. I don't like to wake up in the morning, but I have to, right? Maybe I like to just hang out at night. Why can't I do that? When I went to school, during primary school, I hated school, honestly. It was so boring. I would just sleep all day. I like, why do I need to learn this? Why do I need to memorize this? It was like a torture. The AI will just open that for you. That will remember social interactions. Maybe we'll care for each other more. We'll have more time for that. So I think, from a meaning perspective, I don't think that we'll lose our meaning. The existential crisis is because of these norms that have been established in the societies that, like you just said, what's my daughter's going to do? Probably she'll be very happy not to have to go to school anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, there will always be problems to solve, and there will be goals to set and to discuss, and situations to evaluate between human beings and groups of human beings and things like that, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this question also comes up. I mean, you're an expert in this field. What would happen if you solved aging? If people lived hundreds of years, what are we going to do, right? So, what's going to be the meaning of life? And we could probably talk about that a bit more. And my argument is that there's so much to do, not just on Earth, but think of the space. I grew up watching Star Trek. I was like imagining, one day I want to just go and seek out other civilizations, go to other planets. And there's it's almost unlimited amount of knowledge in infinity to discover, and we just don't have time. We just don't have the means to do that. I totally agree. I think this will open up humanity to really kind of push beyond Earth and start exploring what's out there.
It's also a problem today that we're so used to that we don't see, and that is how specialized we have to be in order to be successful in the structure we have now. In some sense, I think AI can open up for being more amateur, but at a very high level, and
Sure.
more jack of all trades, that you can try your hand on many things because you don't have to spend years and years learning things that you don't really have to
Yep.
know because the computer does it better. Sorry.
Yeah, and I'll give a personal example. I'm very interested in robotics. It has nothing to do with the biology per se, but it's a hobby. I've just been very interested since I read Asimov's book, and I've been trying to train myself on robotics. And now that has accelerated because now I feel like I could probably be a robotics expert if I spent another few months. But it's a passion. I want to learn. It's probably not going to be useful for me very much. It might be actually. I might become a robot repair engineer after I lose my job. But something like that. People can just start to pursue what they're really interested in, go very, very deep into that. Just to.
And it's the act of doing it, not of achieving anything at the end. It's just doing the thing, right?
The experience.
Yeah.
Right. So we forgot about that. We always, especially in the Western world, everything has to be productive. Everything has to have a reason to do that. If you're wasting your time, I'm from a culture where food is very important, right? We in Turkey we enjoy a great meal. People spend hours, 3-4 hours in dinners, and eating slowly, tasting it, and that whole experience itself is adding something to you. Whereas, in US, you just get a sandwich and you got to do the fast, right? Fast food, because you don't want to waste time. It has to be productive. So, yeah, maybe we'll remember that what matters is the experience.
You're talking also there about the sensual realm. So in Harari's book, Homo Deus, he talks about, okay, we can't say that we are specifically the rational ones because the machine's also rational, but we are then the sentient ones who can experience things. We can experience pleasure and take the pleasure in different things.
Yeah, that's another great point. Occasionally, you might have seen on Twitter, I share AI art of the day. These are paintings that I do using Midjourney. I don't do them. I have the AI do them. I have like zero talent in drawing. I can't even draw like a stick person or something like that. But I'm very interested in art. I've like things that I imagine. I like to imagine things. And so now, sometimes I spend a couple of hours in front of Midjourney. I write a prompt. I get something looks really good. I say, okay, well, why don't you change that and do this and do that? So I'm kind of like the conductor or the director, but I'm also the selector and the decider. I decide what is good. Midjourney can put out thousands of images or paintings for me. It doesn't know which one is better than which. So, okay, well, out of that 1,000, this is the best one that I feel is good. And so not only that pushes my own creativity, but also gives me kind of more pleasure, and a lot of people like it as well. So I think a lot of creativity is also going to go in that direction, the experiential. But we're as humans, we are the ones who decide what's beautiful, what's meaningful. And so it's just that there's going to be a creative explosion now, in art, in reading, in books, in videos, right? Movies. There's going to be millions of different movies made, but only few of them are gonna be great, even if they're made by AI. And we're the ones who are gonna decide on that. So that's it's a different perspective.
Speaking of explosions, Harari, he signed a letter, of course, that they had a petition that they wanted to slow down the development of AI until we knew what to do to ensure that things don't go very, very bad. What do you think about that? I guess you refer to them as doomers, and I think Max Tegmark was one as well, and Elon Musk as well.
Yeah, Elon, I don't know. He has different agendas maybe, but yeah, I'm a very, how to put this, a very anti-doomer, AI doomer. If I know they don't like the word doomer, or anyone who wants to pose AI because of existential risks or this and that. I'm 100% against that. And I'll explain why. First, posing AI advanced will do you absolutely no good, because there's absolutely no way you can predict what, let's say, artificial superintelligence will do, right? So that by definition is so super that we cannot achieve its intelligence. Like it's like saying a monkey can determine what a human will do if I don't do this, or if I don't engineer it or whatever. So my view is that it's not going to be bad. I mean, there is always, for super intelligence, we don't know. Okay, so that's one thing. But posing things and try to figure out how to make it safe, is not going to prevent if there is that existential risk. What it could do, and people are doing this, not by posing AI, but have, like for example, before they release O1 model or GPT-4 or any model, there are people who test this. Right now, OpenAI is testing all three models internally. I mean, they're not just released after they're produced. They go through a lot of testing to make sure that whatever the agent is potentially is not going to do something that was not intended to do. Just like when you create a car, you test it, right? You don't want the car not to brake when you press the brake, right? So you want to make sure that it does do what is intended. So those things you can do, but not by posing AI advance, but in parallel. But this notion that if you just stop AI advance or pose it or whatever, will suddenly magically figure it out. Well, I asked those people like Max Tegmark, what were you doing until now? Why didn't you figure that out already? Right? You've been working on this for decades. People like Hinton or Bangio or they're the godfathers of AI, right? So it's like saying, well, my godchild is likely going to be a mass murderer, so I should probably kill that child or put it in jail, or I shouldn't have that child to begin with. That's the wrong approach. Maybe that child's going to be a Nobel Prize winner and is going to cure all diseases, right? So why don't you think about that too? But the problem is not the AI. It's really the humans, right? So any tool that you give to human can be abused by other humans, like a knife, right? We need the knife to do a lot of work, but knife can be used to kill a person. I mean, people argue that, well, AI is not a knife because it has its own agenda, agentic feeling, and the self, maybe determination and things like that. Yeah, you could restrict that as much as you can, and maybe also it's not a terribly great idea to align AI with absolutely human thinking. Humans are not very historically humans didn't do very well to other humans, right? So aligning completely to human values or in values may not be the best idea. So my point is that I'm not saying that we shouldn't study this, we shouldn't spend effort to it, but to say that we need to stop AI advancement, to stop or oppose it, is to me is very is a bad thing, because I'm looking at from the perspective that child's going to grow up to cure all diseases. It's going to reverse aging process. My mom, who's an older person, maybe she doesn't have all that time, right? So, or your loved one who gets cancer next year, God forbid, doesn't have that much time. So every day counts. Every day that we advance AI, millions, maybe billions of lives are going to be saved, right? So it's really unethical to say we need to stop this thing because there might be some potential possibility that this and that. Okay, so if you can do something about it, do it now. Don't try to stop the advance. If you think your child's going to be a mass murderer, try to educate it. Like don't jail that person. Don't stop their growth, but drive them towards that direction. Put all the checkpoints that doesn't happen. I don't know if I could make. I'm a little bit passionate about this because I feel like the benefit of AI is so unbelievably enormous that even to suggest that we should pose it is very repulsive to me.
It's their ethical mindset outlook that even a very small probability of a very catastrophic outcome needs to be taken very seriously, even if it means sacrificing people in the short run.
Well, that's a different philosophical argument, right? So if you it goes like that. So if you wanted to save 1 billion people, would you sacrifice 1 million people? It sounds maybe like that. Or if you wanted to save that 1 million people, would you sacrifice 1 billion people? I mean, listen, the moment we're born, we're destined to die. There is no other existential risk than that, right? So everything in life is risk. The moment you get out of your house, something can fall on your head. A meteor can crash and the world might be destroyed, or something happens in the sun and we might disappear. I mean, that's the nature of life. There is always a possibility that we will not exist. I remember like 20, 30 years ago, people were saying that, the humanity was not going to make it because we're going to destroy ourselves. At the time, it was the humans, nuclear war. A nuclear war would literally destroy humanity, right? We would cease to exist. That was the fear. Yeah, that was that fear. What are we going to do? Not develop the nuclear energy because of that? So we have to take that in account. There might be risks that super intelligence, yeah, maybe it's a 1 in a million risk or 1 in a billion risk that it decides to exterminate us. What are we going to do? It's going to happen anyway, right? So eventually, whether you pose it, you stop it, or this and that, this is the path. This is the path that's open. So the genie is out of the box. So you might as well focus on the positives and make best of it.
Yeah. Maybe we should say that there are scientists, like some of the people we've mentioned, that they say that the risk is quite much higher than that. They're talking about 15-20%. Sure, I'm not arguing for them. I'm just saying that they think that there's a higher risk. And I mean, of course, I've written about this. I can understand that you might worry about their appetite for getting rewarded for reaching a goal, and you might worry about what kind of sub goals they might develop. And I'm talking about AI system. You might worry about what sub goals they could develop to reach their goal. And of course, one of those sub goals could be that they're not entirely honest when you do the safety test and so on. But still, I've never been really convinced of their arguments. And I do feel like you, Derya, that this is something we absolutely not should pursue. And I think the chance of getting a fantastic upside is so much higher than a small risk of getting something bad out of this.
And on the contrary, your risk of dying from aging is 100%.
Yeah. So maybe we should talk about that now, because. Or Patrick, are you finished? Do you want more doomer things?
No, that was
no. You don't want me to continue on that.
I was at a kind of a conference, a pop-up city in Montenegro. And there were a lot of longevity enthusiasts there. Aubrey de Grey was there, and many others. And a lot of very enthusiastic longevity people. But then, this was in the context of when the doomers first started to really talk, and so they had a meeting, and afterwards they all looked so downcast, and they're like, "Well, we're all gonna die anyway because of the AI."
Yeah, so. Sure. That's Eliezer Yudkowsky. He's
exactly him.
He's in 99.
Exactly him. Yeah. They listen to talk by him.
Yeah. According to Eliezer, it's a 99.99% risk that we're going to die. But nobody agrees with him on that.
Yeah, I've known him for 20 years, so he's been saying the same nonsense for very long. Actually, it was very opposite before, and so, but that's not the point. But I do want to make one sort of a point from an evolutionary perspective, right? So the way our brains evolved is to detect threats, right? This is very, very important for survival. because you have to focus on what could potentially could go wrong, even if the chances of that is very, very low, because your survival will depend on it. If there's a lion coming behind you, you know, in 99.9% of cases, it's not going to be a lion, but you should be always worried about that, and that's why all the stress hormones are immediately released upon. Like if you live in New York City, you'll be very, very stressed because there's this ambulances and police cars constantly going around, and you just feel threatened all the time. Is even though you know it's not for you, right? It's the same for these doomers. They are really sort of hacking into that human psychology, that when you create this fear mongering, even if the chances are so low, people are gonna immediately focus on that threat. Oh my God, there is a 1 in a million chance I might die. Like people who take up airplanes. Their airplane travel is so safe, but there was just a unfortunate accident yesterday. That's going to be news days and days and days. It's terrible, but think of how many people die every day from traffic accident, for example. So threats are evolutionarily very attentive, seeking results. So, but anyway, I don't have to.
Yeah. So about us solving aging with the help of AI and doing it in a short time frame. That has gotten some pushback. I know that Dario Amodei wrote in his essay, Machines of Loving Grace, that we could probably double maximum lifespan in the span of, I don't remember, 5 to 10 years or something like that. Maybe it was a little bit longer. And then, I mean, Patrick and I, we talk to a lot of longevity folks in the longevity community, and we are. You are going to speak at the Vitalist Bay, Derya, and so we are sponsored by Vitalism, and I know that several people in the Vitalism community, they think that AI is like hopium, that we can't rely on AI to fix this. We have to continue building and so on. And I think two of the things that they are very skeptical about is that, one, we don't have the data to actually solve this. So we need the data first. And two, what about clinical trials and biomarkers of aging? We don't have those either. At least clinical trials will take a long time. How can we shorten that down? What do you think about that when you talk about so short timelines for reaching longevity escape velocity, for example?
Yeah. So my timeline is a little longer than Dario Amendoza's, but I actually had a bet with Gary Marcus on that, which I'm going to win. So I claim that by within 20 years, the average lifespan is going to be at least 95, probably more, and then we would have reached the longevity escape velocity by then, and then we would solve aging within maximum 20 years, but probably within 10 to 15 years, and definitely we'll be able to cure every disease. So yeah, I get these questions a lot. Incidentally, this is not a new prediction I made. I had a website called Biosingularity. I think I might have coined that word. I don't know if anybody used it before. This was 20 years ago. And I still have the website. It was a blog that I was writing, and so there I predicted in 20 years ago, in 2005, that by year 2045 or so, we're going to cure aging, and not only aging, but we'll get to human 2.0, human enhancement, and so on, with the help of AI. 20 years ago, this was a pure science fiction. People like, oh, that's impossible. And my timeline didn't change very much. If anything, it actually is more forward now. But let's get into specifics to your question. Why I think that way. because obviously I'm a scientist. I work in this field. I understand biology, and there must be a reason why I think in such a short period we can achieve this. When people say, well, in the past 50 years we've been studying cancer, this and that, and we did very little advance, and it was actually more than a little advance, but there's a good point. How can you extrapolate to the next 10 years that we couldn't be able to do in the last 100 years? Well, if you didn't have AI, in fact, I specifically said that 20 years ago, with AI, if there was no AI, we didn't have any chance. Not in the next 100 years, maybe not in the 1,000 years. There is a very specific reason for that, is because biological systems is extraordinarily complex. Complex doesn't mean we cannot figure it out. It just has too many parts. Like a Boeing airplane, I don't know, has millions of parts, right? So if you put it in front of somebody, they can't figure that out. But we were able to build it, right? We know what each part does. Imagine biology, that's like 100 times, 1,000 times more. There are many, many parts that are interacting. At the same time, biological systems are extraordinarily predictable. There is an underlying algorithm in biology. It's not a random, chaotic event. It might seem that way. Why? Because you can take a single cell from one individual and you can make a clone of that individual. Looks exactly like that person. Identical. Like identical twins are identical, right? And how is that possible? That trillions of reactions are happening during development and nothing goes wrong, that you look exactly the same. So, or that any medicine works. Like you give one drug, you can cure some diseases, or you can change the whole system where you have millions of parts interacting with each other. Just one molecule can change everything. And that's because this whole machinery of biology works in a very feedback loops, very hemostatic fashion. It just has too many parts, too many functionalities. And that it's not possible for any human being, even a million or a billion human being, to put all that together. The only way we can do that is through AI in computation, literally. So here's what's going to happen. We also have the technology to generate. I agree about the point about generating data. That's what's really missing right now. But we are generating so much data right now. So for example, I am doing an experiment in the lab where I am looking at single cell and thousands of proteins in that single cell, how it changes across time. And then I'm looking at thousands of cells at the same time. So in one experiment, I'm generating millions and millions of data points, just me. And imagine that thousands of scientists around the world generating this massive, massive amount of data. How are we going to analyze this data? There's no possibility. But if you have AI that can put all that together, and eventually, and this is a project that I'm actually starting to initiate, eventually you can start to simulate a given cell, which we call a virtual cell, that, of course, it's going to take a lot of effort to generate all that data and then to simulate the computation power we're going to need. But imagine that AI can actually predict, if I give one signal, if I give one drug to that cell, it's going to give this output, because it's very computational. You have an input, you have an output, right? So all you have to do is to have that predictive power. Then imagine that you put all those cells together and you start to go up to the organs and tissues. Now you can start to predict, AI can predict, if I have this drug, what's going to happen in your heart versus your kidney versus your brain, because it has the modeling of all those organs. Now imagine even one step further, that it also includes your genetic, your metabolomic, your epigenetic, your microbiome data in that, which we call digital twin. I mean, digital twin means different things for other people, but for me, that's the digital twin, where I can simulate my complete biological system in silico using AI. this is not going to happen now. It's going to take another decade, both computationally and generating all that data. But now you you can literally not only screen for drugs, which we can do now in matter of days, right? I can find a drug, but I still have to test it in the lab animals, in the lab, and then do clinical trials, which take years to do, or biomarkers, this and that. So if I have that virtual person, if I can screen for drugs in matter of minutes or hours, I can in one day test on your digital twin, out of that million drugs that I found, which one will work best for curing your disease. I'm not talking about just curing cancer. I'm talking about curing your cancer, your diabetes, complete personalization. And I can determine that in just matter of hours, in matter of days. All I have to do then is to select, maybe 10 people who have almost a similar genetic or metabolic identity, and then I test it clinically, which would have an 100% impact of treating and 0% side effect, right? So most drugs don't work. Like statins work 1 out of 20 people who take them, because we don't know who to give the statin. So it's not just cholesterol. Not everybody who has high cholesterol benefits from statin. Not everybody has low cholesterol benefits not taken from statin. So that's the future I'm imagining. So once you get to that point, then it is the singularity. It is sort of the biosingularity, where now what you couldn't do in decades, you'll be able to do in literally days or weeks or months. And you'll also be able to predict from the agent perspective that if I give this medicine, I will be able to regenerate the tissue. Because there's this notion that people think, oh, well, in order to test aging a drug, I have to wait, decades, because how am I going to know if someone's going to live that long? No, that's not the case. So if I have a drug that can regenerate the immune system or your heart, I'll see the effect in matter of weeks or months, right? Your immune system is regenerating. Your skin, if it starts to regenerate within weeks, your new cells are going to grow, and you're going to look 20 years younger in a matter of weeks, right?
We're all looking forward to that one.
Yeah, exactly. My mom is asking me that every single day. So you will see the impact almost immediately. That's why maybe we won't see a tremendous advance, linearly in the next decade, but it's gonna grow and grow and grow, and suddenly within a matter of years, you'll see that, oh my God, most diseases are curable. Like GLP-1 agonists, which are miraculous drugs. Like one drug, one hormone, will probably is adding 5-10 years lifespan on most people's lives. It's that important. So just multiply that by 100. Within a decade, you start to say, oh, well, we just found the drug, ran the clinical trial using AI, and then immediately give it to people. And, a few weeks later, it cured the disease or started to regenerate this organ or that or this. So I think that this exponential thing is what's really missing, because I actually posted on Twitter yesterday, X, sorry, that if you put a single grain of rice on a chessboard in the first square, by square 10, you only have 1,000 grains. It's nothing. By 20 square, you're about 20 kilograms. It's okay. By 30 square, you have about 20 metric tons of rice. Oh, okay. Well, that's quite a bit. But by the time you come to 64 square, you have 380 billion metric tons of rice. That's more than what humans produced in the last 1,000 years. So that's what's missing on people really need this book, The Singularity is There.
Yeah. The emperor should have read that when he thought that it was a good idea to provide rice.
That's right. It's the famous emperor story. Exactly.
Yeah, and what you're saying now sounds awfully close to what Google DeepMind and their spin-off company Isomorphic Labs are talking about. They're also talking
Yeah,
about creating this virtual cell.
exactly.
And of course, you have in silico medicine that are doing AI designed drugs now. So they have this pipeline where
Many other companies are getting into it. Sam Altman has a company. You probably know.
Retrobio that he's been investing in.
There are many others. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is not. It doesn't sound like we're too far off from that reality where we can actually simulate a lot of biology in that way, in that very granular way. Do you think that we could get to in silico all the way? Just skip the clinical trials? I know this is a stupid question, but let's play with it.
I can foresee that happening. I mean, we have to get to that complete virtual twin simulation, which is not going to be easy. I mean, that's why we need that $500 billion investment. People say, "Oh, well, sell Nvidia stock because we don't need any more computation." DeepSeek solved that problem. My argument is that we're going to need a millionfold more computation for the biological systems. If we can achieve that, and with super intelligence, I don't see why not. Like, why we need to test it on humans at all? Everything can be tested in silico and then just directly approved. We probably won't have FDA then. You will probably have an AI approval process. Whether it will happen in a decade or 2 decades, eventually it will be. Yeah. But the point is, well, we're not going to stop there, because in my mind, we're already done with diseases and aging. That's like a done deal. It's just a matter of time, whether it's going to happen in 10, 15, or 20 years.
Yeah.
It's finished. My really thinking is now moving into human 2.0. How do we actually advance our capabilities beyond what we can do? How can we make ourselves, hundreds of times more intelligent? Or, I want to be able to see like an owl what's out there in 2 kilometers, like zoom in, or, all kinds of things that we can't even imagine now. Suddenly starts to become, potentially out of the science fiction into the reality.
Yeah, another thing I tell my daughter is that at one point in her life, and hopefully mine as well. I mean, I'm 48 now.
You're very young.
Thank you. Yeah, like we're going to reach that point. We're going to look back and say that people had these diseases, cancer and dementia, and it was awful. We couldn't do much about it, and people died every day from them. Like we're talking about infectious diseases today, right? I mean, I read this fantastic book about how they discovered. I don't remember what it's called. It was kind of the proto version of antibiotic that was very popular at first, but then got replaced. Anyway, you were placed in that point in time, like in the beginning of the 20th century, like the First World War and so on, and there was nothing they could do about it. They didn't know what to do, and people were dying left and right.
Yeah.
And now it's unimaginable. I mean, of course, we had the pandemic, but still, it feels like we're past that point.
Yeah, I mean, almost 50% of the children didn't make it to age 10. I mean, imagine that you knew that half of your children born were gonna die, and there was nothing you could do about it. I mean, the way the life was, even 100 years ago couldn't even be imaginable to us. The suffering and the pain of people, and that's exactly what's going to be in 10 years from now.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
We're going to a glorious future here.
Yeah.
Okay, Derya. Maybe first, I want to revisit something I just mentioned in passing before, that you're talking at Vitalist Bay. What are you going to tell the audience there?
So what the session I'm going to talk is sort of the intersection of biology, medicine, and AI. The plan is that, of course, I don't know what's going to happen between now and May. That's a very long. I think I'm going there early May.
You have to write the speech the day before.
Yeah, probably, maybe in an hour before. But in a rough structure, the plan is that I want to tell the audience more specifically, some of the things that I just mentioned now, but in a more specific manner. For example, focusing on the immune system, how we could accelerate the biological or biomedical science research and the translation of that using AI, sort of a little bit extrapolating into the future, as hard as it is. And one of the goals is that not only I'm very, very hopeful and optimistic. At the same time, I feel it's very important that uh, a lot more people believe in that and participate in that process, because that's why I'm a very big believer in open science, open source systems, because the more people who can participate, I'm just one person, one lab, and I'm just saying that to other scientists as well. And it's really a kind of unfortunate that many scientists haven't yet caught up to the AI. Then we could really start to accelerate. We can go into the paradigm shifts, because this is going to be a joint effort. It's not a one person, one company is going to solve these problems. And now we are at a point where somebody who doesn't have a PhD or an MD degree can actually help, can participate. Somebody who's a patient, who's passionate about their own disease, can figure things out. I love the word biohacker. Again, I might have used this mid 90s. I even had a website called biohacker.com. The concept of biohacking starts to become a reality. Up to this point, it really was a very amateurish type of a thing. Trial of N1, like people trying things on their own and then sharing that information, it becomes very, very valuable, because I always think that patient is always right. Patient is always right in the sense that whatever happens in that patient is the reality, is not what the doctor thinks it is, or the science thinks it is. So I think that's my goal in trying to explain things from a biological perspective, and how the AI can really super boost these advances, and how others can participate. And we really have to, especially I'm saying this for the gatekeeping scientist. I'm very critical of this. There are a number of aging researchers who don't even believe that we can reverse aging, right? So I had one the other day that I was very critical of. If you don't believe that you can reverse aging, it's like saying that I work on cancer. I never believe we can cure cancer, but we can make the life of the cancer patient better. Let's have better cancer. That's what it means, age better. There's no such thing as age better. You age and you die. It's a terrible thing. We need to solve this problem. And we can solve this problem. And why we can solve this problem. Those are the things that I want to talk about. And whatever happens between now and May, probably
Yeah,
will impact that.
sounds wonderful. I'm just going to get the... Hang on for a bit.
And maybe you should try to post this a little bit earlier, because I feel everything I say is going to be totally obsolete.
So I'm just going to say that I'm trying to get the homepage for Vitalist Bay here. Yeah, let's see.
There's a lot of speakers, I think.
I will be
Yeah.
there at the
You'll be
end
there?
of
Oh, great.
end of May, and I will talk about
Yeah.
philosophy. And I don't think any questions will be solved until then and now.
Philosophy moves a little bit slower.
I would do it together with O1 Pro or O3 Pro by that time. I actually got interested in philosophy after I interact with O1 Pro because we do realize that philosophy turns out to be really important. Because it does shape what you think about the future and the meaning, and maybe there's no other time it's more important than now. So I won't be there, but I wish I could listen to you.
I actually asked DeepSeek to solve the Riemann hypothesis, and it thought for 5 minutes before it gave up. But that was quite a journey to read its thinking. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know the first thing about math, so it was just a fun thing to do, and probably not very climate friendly thing to do. But still, yeah, I think you're right, Patrick. You should actually consult the reasoning models that are out now, because they could surprise you. Yeah, so I'm just going to say that Vitalist Bay is an 8-week longevity zone in Berkeley, California, bringing the world's best minds together to extend human health span and solve aging. And of course, what we've established now, that you both are going to go there and speak, and that's wonderful. I don't know yet if will be able to go, but sounds like a great thing to do. Derya,
very fortuitous, because I don't think you knew that I was going to go there before we set up this podcast. So
yeah. I actually exactly. I reached out to you because I was, as many people are on X, inspired by what you write there, and I think could have been one of the first times I really noticed you, because the algorithm put you in my feed, was when you wrote the thing we discussed earlier about what if you're going to be a physician, maybe you should think about that and perhaps reconsider. So yeah, that was the spark for me. And then after I asked you, I saw you quite soon that you were going to speak at the Vitalist Bay, and then I felt like, yeah, this is a perfect match for our podcast.
I also think that the Vitalist Bay, it's like a model of a new way of having colleges or universities where you just decide to all meet at a certain spot and you're interested in the same issues, and there you are. Yeah. You learn from each other and you invite experts, and so people in a sort of democratic way create their own institutions in this way.
Yes, I think it's a great organization, and by the way, I'm also going to Honduras. There's a city called Prospera. I didn't know about it. Apparently, sort of like the longevity and human enhancement issues, and they're just trying to get like-minded people together, and I totally agree. I mean, sometimes people criticize, well, you're creating a bubble of everybody thinks like you, and that's not really true, because you really want to share time and ideas with the same people who share the same dreams as you do. Because I wouldn't want to go to a doomers conference. It will just create more stress in me. I really don't share the same aspirations as they do, so it's not really going to benefit me, and then I'm not going to benefit them either. So let them do their own doomer stuff, and then let's focus on vitalism in life, and
We had Niklas Antzinger who's been spearheading a project
Yeah.
in
He reached out to me.
yeah, we had him on the podcast. We'll make sure to link to that in the show notes as well. And there was something I was going to say, but now it fell out of my head. Yeah.
Maybe you were going to say, "Are you going to make it?" Well,
yeah.
I think the message which I stole from Brian Johnson, that yeah, don't die. That two word really makes sense now. If you said don't die 50 years ago, who cares? I'm going to die anyway. I'll just live my life the way I want it. But we're at a point where if you live another 5 years, you'll probably live another 10 years, 20 years. If you live another 10 years, you're probably not going to die for a very, very long time. So I think it makes sense not to try not to die these days.
Yeah. I'm not more okay. I am not a risky person. I don't put myself in too much of a dangerous situations. But I don't. I've been thinking about if I were going to live for 1,000 years, would I be more risk averse? But
that's a question for Patrick. It's a
yeah, Patrick. Am I going to be more risk averse?
Well, it's a choice of who you want to be and how you want to shape your life. I think that's going to be individual variation, just like today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we're going to have to come up with some sort of a backup system, right? If we can create a digital twin, why can't we create a backup of our brains in case our physical bodies is destroyed? We can just upload it again to a new body.
Do you know who Anders Sandberg is?
Who?
Anders Sandberg. I pronounce it in Swedish. Maybe you would say Anders Sandberg or something like that. But he's a
Anders Sandberg. Yes.
Yeah. I had to say it in the American form.
Okay.
Yeah, we had him on the podcast. We recorded an episode with him a few weeks ago, and we talked about that.
Yeah.
The uploading stuff.
That's still science fiction, but I think we're at a point we cannot say the word impossible.
Yeah,
that probably is no longer valid.
That's true. Yeah, what I was going to say before was that I think also that the community building is so important because vitalism is very tightly connected to longevity biotech fellowship. Yeah. So longevity biotech fellowship have these retreats where if you're interested in this, if you're interested in longevity, in solving aging, and you're not really sure what to work on, these retreats are there to help you. And Patrick and I were to one of those retreats when they had one in Sweden last year. And it was just the most amazing thing because you actually got to meet a lot of people who share the same goals as you do. And still it's not that common. Most people are ignorant about both what's going to happen with AI, but also about the possibility of living a long time. There's a lot of death apologism still out there and so on. So I think community is so important.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I mean, it's very strangely, it's not so easy to live in a world where when you talk about curing aging or living hundreds of years, you get a lot of pushback, a lot of criticism, a lot of doomerism, and people say, well, that's the natural thing. This is you're playing God or this or that. I mean, it can get very depressing if you're not among the like-minded people. And I've been in these circles for a very long time. Of course, some of the small groups can get very cultish and things like that as well. But I think now now is the time to really come up together, because the path has opened. Honestly, even 5 years ago, we knew it was going to happen, but we didn't know how or when. So when it's just a matter of time, that we need to support each other more so now than ever, and really spread the, I don't know, spread the gospel or whatever, so other people can also benefit from this.
Yeah. Derya, have you any books left to recommend now?
So I mentioned about singularities near, and I think I mentioned about the intelligent machines. I have the first copy here. The other two books that I would really recommend, that these are books that fundamentally influenced me. There are many books, but uh, there's another book which is a science fiction book called Snow Crash, by Neil Stevenson. It was written, I think, in 1991 or something like that. It predicted the internet. The word metaverse was invented in that book first. I won't give it away, but it's just an incredible book, and that really influenced my whole thinking about the future when I first read it in the early 90s. The other book that I would highly recommend is from David Deutsch. Truly a brilliant mind. He has several books, but the one that I like most is the Fabric of Reality. It is a book that can really paradigm shift your thinking about the universe and everything else. He's basically making the point that there are four threads that put everything together in the universe. There's the computation, there is the evolution, there is the quantum theory, and then the last one. I'm just missing up on that, but anyway, so these four pillars basically. So the fourth one is the epistemology, the Popperian epistemology. Karl Popper basically said that you can never disprove anything, but you can create conjectures or hypotheses that you can only try to test that they hold over time. The theories should not change based on the new facts, and then as things modify, you change your knowledge set. So it's really a remarkable book and so relevant for today. And as we look forward to the next decade. So
the Fabric of Reality got some attention recently when I think it was was it Google that talked about progress in quantum computing and how that progress might not prove, but kind of strengthen the case of a multiverse.
Yeah. It just makes you think in a very different way, and I like thinking different. So I'm actually rereading that together with O1 Pro. I'm taking like sections from it and then asking O1 Pro what it thinks about it, and in a very, so it's kind of a new way, in an interactive way, to read books again.
Wonderful, Derya. Thank you so much for talking with us today. I'm sure that when we finish this recording, I will go on X and then I will find you again. So that's reassuring to me. And what is your X handle? Where can people find you if they want to connect?
It's my first name, Derya. There's TR and underdash. So Derya TR underdash is my handle for. I had another account, but this is my verified account. So
perfect. Thank you.
My pleasure, and thank you for inviting me. It was very wonderful to talk to you guys.